Hey everyone, I'm TradeBetter99. Thank you so much for tuning in with me today on 5 crucial financial discussions that you need to have with your significant other before you buy into real estate. Number one is financial goals and risk tolerance. This is something that I've always talked about with my wife about how are we going to get there? What is our overall goal for looking what financial freedom looks to us? We've become more focused on the idea of early retirement and the idea of being able to spend more time with our family, being able to spend more time with our loved ones, because time's always never a guarantee. So our goal is to do as much as possible, gain as much as possible. And then it leads into, okay, if we're going to make this goal, what is our risk tolerance? Tolerance is always something that you have to really evaluate with yourself as a couple. Is that saying I'm very risk positive? I would never say I'm too risk heavy, but I would definitely say I'm risk tolerant. I understand potential risks and what I also see what the benefit of the growth could be. Where my wife is a little bit more risk averse, but that's fine because more natural saving and it makes it more understanding on how we can grow, maybe more slowly, but it's a more guaranteed return. Other items that we look at within the risk and the goals is that do we align together on this idea? Are we thinking about retiring early? Are we thinking about growth? Are we thinking about other items like that? And that's where we spend a lot of time together is like, what are the final goals for us to be together and how we look at ourselves next 10 years from now? How do we see it with our family? And that was something that we had a lot of discussions about, but it was also it wasn't arguing because that was something that we never really wanted to do because this is our future that we were planning for. And that was really exciting because we both realized it's like, oh, we want to have more time together. And it's one of those things where it's like you can always earn more money. There's always time to make more money. But we realized that the most important item was time back. Number two, this was something that was very interesting as well. Is that so? What's your investment strategy and property type? This was something that was out of my wife's wheelhouse, but she wanted me to talk to her about it because it's something that you're saying, oh, I want to buy into this city, but are you looking for single family houses, small multi, large multi? What are you really looking for here? And for Akron, Ohio, we realized that small multi is great because it was something that maybe a single family may be a little too expensive for certain families. But if you have a small multi, it actually works out really well because it's not half the mortgage, but you're actually paying most of the mortgage with one rent on the side, but you have leeway to have another tenant take in that additional rent. That's been really a great part with us for our location. And it and then so we knew which property that we were looking at. So what was the investment strategy? Were we doing a buy and hold long term? Was it fix and flip? Are you doing short term, midterm rentals? That was a discussion that we had. It was very quick because I knew I wanted to do long term. And without too much added effort, she agreed because it's at the end of the day, it's no such thing as passive income, but we want to make sure that it was something that we could work together and we could understand a positive trajectory. And the biggest question that I had before we bought our first market, I actually went through close to, I'd say 10 markets before finding a really great location. And that was because of the team that I had. And that's where I was able to find the market of Akron, Ohio. And that was where the investment strategy really built in. And it's one of those where I look at it every day. I try and make sure what everything looks like. But it was something that I spoke with my wife about because while we've had family in that area, it's still out of state for us because we're on the other parts of the country. And I wanted to make sure that it was something that we could take care of remotely, but also make sure that it was a location that we felt safe with our investment. Number three, financial resources and budget. This is always the fun part because while you might get caught up with your eyes being larger than your stomach, and you have to really sit down and go through your finances, what's going in, what's going out, and how much realistically can you afford. And you have to factor in down payment, closing costs, Is this a turnkey? I mean, most turnkeys are not always turnkeys. And so you'll have to do some sort of fix and flip, or not flip, but fix for the property. And you have to factor that in. So you have be sure you do your inspections and be sure you calculate how much you pay for inspections. There's items that you would pay for just the regular home inspection, but also be sure to get your pipes checked. Make sure that there's nothing growing inside, and it's just all little added costs, but be sure to put that in a spreadsheet right there. It's really been beneficial for us because now we've been wrapping up our first year. It's more, okay, what's the anticipated fixes? It's like, okay, the roof's all, what, 10 years old, so we maybe have another good 10 years, but we're saving up for that. We realized that we had to fix the electrical, fix plumbing inside, but these were all added items. But it also made sure that we knew that we weren't buying too much house too fast. And so it turned into, okay, well, this is what it is, but how are you going to finance it? Unfortunately, it's one of those really interesting situations. So buying a property in the $125,000 range, you're saying, oh, this is excellent. But remember, most banks require a 25% down for the investment property. And a lot of lenders don't touch for anything less than 100,000. So your lenders are going to be a lot more limited. So you might be paying higher interest rates. So be sure you might have bought a single family house or your primary home for maybe 6%. But if you are looking at the investment property, imagine to be on the higher end of that. And it's just something to think about, calculate, and be sure to have that open conversation with. And while you're doing that, be sure you understand what the intended return on investment is. What is the cash on cash yield? Is your market more cash flow? Is it more appreciation? Are you guessing the appreciation? So it's a very honest conversation that you have to have. My wife and I realized that it's like we're looking more for cash flow. We understand that appreciation is appreciation, which is great, but you're not really going to get that realization, say, in price or when in rent, because the appreciation might be really high, but the taxes might eat you at the end. So be sure to understand where you're going from with that. And so, which leads us to number 4, roles and responsibilities. What are you planning for this property? It's great. You can plan for buying the property, but how are you going to take care of it at that point? Buying it's just the first part. You have to understand how it's being managed. Are you going to self-manage? Are you hiring a property manager? Do you know property managers in the area that you've vetted? And it's one of those where you have to make sure that you understand how much they take, because some property management companies will take 10% right away, but they won't do anything. Or there are some places that you actually, and this is what we do, we pay a little bit more than 10%, but we get a full service and it's really a lot easier. And then on top of that, with that property management, or if you're self-managing, how are you handling the finances and accounting when it's coming in and going out? Because remember, tax season is always there, so you need to have your receipts, you need to have everything in one kind of easy to use situation for your accountant, otherwise you're going to make them cry. So we use Appfolio. I think it's a wonderful product. It makes life a lot easier and it saves the receipts and makes everything go a lot more user friendly. And then on with that is that how will you handle the decision making for repairs, renovations, and of course regular tenant issues? We started off by self-managing, and for the most part, it started off okay. The hardest part were the 2 a.m., the 4 a.m. calls saying the heat's out or saying this is out, and you have to get this done as soon as possible. And it's, once again, no fault of the tenants, but also you just have to calculate or understand the emergency costs with like an HVAC company. Or if there's plumbing out, you have to understand the emergency cost of that. And on top of that, the lost time that you might have. And so that's why we eventually went with a property management company, because it provided more peace of mind. While we're saying, oh yeah, I could do that. This is something what I do. But it saves us from the 4 a.m. calls. And I will pay that all day, every day. And this is probably the most important part that you have to think about once you've either purchased the property or you're planning to purchase the property, is that, do you have an emergency fund? How much are you planning on putting aside? Is it 15,000, do you think that you could survive vacancies? Are there any large repairs that were unforeseen? Lost HVAC or plumbing crashes, which I have, and then also panels that need to be replaced. Unfortunately, I have replaced two of the three. And potential legal issues that you might go through, and I mean, whether it be evictions or maybe other items that you have to think about. But that's why I always recommend getting an umbrella insurance program with yours. Not financial advice, but it's something that I would definitely look into with your insurance companies. And on top of that, what is the plan of dealing with financial setbacks? Is there, if your tenant leaves, what kind of loss of income are you seeing? How long can you withstand it? How can you offset that? If there's any property damage, I mean, it's not just tenant, but say if it's a natural disaster, or even if there's just a regular market downturn, that happens all the time. You might have to learn on how to pivot, saying, hey, we may not be making the right amount of cash flow per the current prices, or we might not get a tenant at those prices. So are you still cash flowing when it goes down? That's something really to think about. And these are all conversations that I've had with my wife, that before we bought our first investment property, before we even bought our first primary property, I think this is something you really think about, because you have to think about what items that are most important to you. And just to summarize it, it's number one is your financial goals and risk tolerance. Number two is your investment strategy and the property type you're looking for. 3, finances and your budgeting, how much can you afford? Responsibilities and roles. Who's going to be maintaining the property and who's going to be the point of contact? And number 5, emergency fund. What is your contingency plan? What are you thinking about and everything? And thank you again for sitting here with me today. I'm Trade Better 99, reporting from Vegas. Great time with the ORAT event. Thank you so much.